and it's good to see a new face in Councillor Gordon, who's substituting for Councillor Hunt. Do we have any apologies?
Yes, Chair, we do. We have Damien McCann, Councillor Hugh Thomas, Councillor Jane Mudd, Councillor Auntie Hunt, Stephen Vickers, Christopher Lee, James Williams, Kelly Byrne and Rob O'Dwyer. And we have Councillor Gordon as representative for Councillor Hunt.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest?
Yeah, just the one that I always make if anything in there is related to cryptocurrencies.
Thanks, Sean.
I don't think there's anything on the agenda today.
Looks fine.
You'll all have had the minutes for the meeting of the 5th of June. Do we accept them as a true record?
Move them as a true record.
Thanks. Have we got a seconder?
Okay.
Thanks, Liz. Okay, let's get on to the substantive items. The first one, item 4, is the Joint Committee Revenue Budget Final Outturn position.
Good morning. My name is Ian Allwood. I'm the Deputy Section 151 Officer for Cardiff for the accountable body. I'm just covering for Chris Lee this morning. So the outturn report in front of you, I think hopefully most of you will be familiar to this. The recommendations are noting the final outturn position for the year ending 31st of March 2023. Also outlines proposed treatment of the underspend and also notes the impact of proposed capitalisation policy and treatment. Highlighting table 1, which is in under paragraph 6 of the report, which sets out the variances against the approved budget net underspend of £558,079. As you can see, primarily relating to employee costs, both in relation to vacancy savings and reduction in employee costs due to being able to charge staff time to capital projects. Table 2 proposes the use of the underspend, and this is clearly set out in the financial implications. So we are suggesting that £172,486 is contributed to the CJC earmarked reserve, £161,817 to the general reserve, and then £223,776 will reflect the reduction in the top slice contribution required, thereby protecting revenue resources for future use. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Do we have any questions? I'm peering around the screen there to see if I can see a hand.
No, I think it's historic, and I think that we probably get more out of ongoing monitoring for this year, Chair.
I think you're right. Are we all agreed to the recommendations? I think we probably have to go round by name on this one. So it's who I see on the screen, basically. Councillor Morgan?
Happy to agree.
Councillor Burnett?
Agreed.
Councillor Thomas?
Agreed.
Councillor Garant? Oh, Councillor Thomas too.
Agreed. Too many of us.
I'm used to calling you Garant. Councillor Gordon?
Agreed.
Has Councillor Morgan come? Andrew Morgan, no.
Not yet,
and
Chair.
myself agreed.
I'm sorry, Chair, and you've also got Councillor Hugh David from Bridgend.
Agreed, Chair.
I didn't see you, Councillor David. Agreed.
In the corner.
Green, you've just popped up in the middle. So shall we move on to the next item? The annual business plan.
Thank you, Chair. This is a sort of the standard report, quarterly performance reporting that we do for Cabinet. This sort of is a report reflecting on our performance during Q4 of the last financial year, 22-23. In terms of key highlights to pull up for your attention, I think they're really predominantly identified in paragraph 9. So by the end of the last financial year, we had committed 335 million of the wider investment fund to projects, and that accounted for approximately 2/3 of the wider investment fund. there's 2 more full business cases on your agenda later today that will, significantly increase that amount. Positively, last year was a good year for us in terms of actual project spend. We recorded just shy of £47 million worth of expenditure on our projects. They were covering across nearly 20 projects in terms of projects being active. And that figure is nearly 50% of what we've spent as a city deal over the last 6 years. So we can see the real upturn in terms of delivery and focus. And our performance, our expectation for this year is that we'll exceed that again. So the momentum is really built up, and we're now starting to see some outputs and hopefully some outcomes and impacts following through in the next few years. In terms of what were the key activities in that last quarter of last financial year, well, it was the final confirmation of the purchase of the Aberthaw Power Station, which is a significant milestone for us. The Cyber Innovation Hub launched its first challenges to the market. And also we had 11 of the 12 housing viability gap schemes under contract. It's an important milestone for that programme, the Housing Viability Gap Fund, but we've still got some significant work to do to ensure that we deliver on the benefits and the promises of that scheme. In terms of the non-wider investment fund activities to highlight to you, I think we had a really positive launch of the Innovation Investment Fund at the Wales Week in London, promoting the fund to potential inward investment opportunities from London to the region and also to other fund managers. So that was a really good event for us. We also did a lot of work around planning for the Unleash conference that was held in early April at the ICC, and many of you were there, and we had a great turnout. Over 350 businesses registered for the event, and I think there was a really good momentum being built behind the work that we're doing across the region. And then finally, we also had the MIPIM conference in the south of France. We had a couple of the leaders out with us, so Councillor Hugh Thomas from Cardiff, Councillor Jane Mudd from Newport, and Councillor Anthony Hunt from Torfaen. And I think it was, again, a good event promoting the region on an international scale. And I think that's more work for us to do there going forwards. In terms of everything else, we were continuing to see through some of the AGS action plans, and they're noted in paragraph 14 of the report, and also meeting some of the internal audit action plan actions that were agreed, and they're outlined in paragraph 16 of the report. In terms of, and this links back to the outturn report that you heard about the finances, resourcing has been a challenge for us. It continues to be a challenge in terms of recruiting high quality staff to the team. We've made some significant progress in Q4 in terms of putting adverts out there and starting to make some key appointments. Those will be, we'll feel the effect of those as we're going through this financial year. And hopefully we'll be in a better position with more resilience in our team as we go through this year and be able to deliver on all fronts. And I think that's it from me, really, in terms of highlighting key aspects from the report, and it's just to commend the recommendations for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rhys. Do we have any comments, please? Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Rhys, it was just what you mentioned there on CCR resourcing. There's a huge amount of work going on. And you're talking about fixed term contracts and the market conditions are difficult, but you're hopeful. How much of a risk is this for us going forward? Is this an amber or is this a red risk, do you think?
In terms of long-term resilience, it's an amber red. In terms of where we are in the here and now, is probably in the amber. I think we've made some good progress over the last 6 months in terms of recruiting to the team. Our challenge is, the fixed-term contracts in this current climate is not particularly appealing to people. And when the big risk for us is ongoing delivery. As I said, we spent 47 million last financial year. I think our target for this year is in the 50-something million, mid-50s. And you need resilience and you need strength to your team. I hope as we move into the CJC, we can review and reflect on some of those recruitment practices that we've got. I know Cabinet were very clear a few years ago that we could not exceed 10 permanent appointments. And that's the constraint that we've been operating under. So I think that's something that we will need to reflect as we move forward.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Rhys.
Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to thank, all the officers for the great work that's going on currently within the region, and the work that's planned as well. The capital region, the city deal, is there to make our residents' lives a lot more prosperous and better. And there's a lot going on. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Thomas. I think we'd all echo that remark. I think we've got an external. It's just Gareth Ashman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was just going to comment really on the fixed term appointments question really that Councillor Morgan raised. We're seeing we're seeing real adverse effects of fixed term contracts in other growth deals within North Wales, and it is impacting significantly on delivery. North Wales have got a number of fixed term contracts, and they, really the attrition rate due to the fixed term contracts coming to an end is impacting significantly on delivery. So I'd like to just put that out there that fixed term contracts can significantly impact on delivery, especially like Rhys said, when you were in a far more advanced phase of delivery than North Wales as well. So bodies on the ground are really important, and I've seen it impact the growth deals elsewhere where they have moved from full-time appointments to fixed term contracts, and it's negatively impacted the deal.
Yeah, thank you, Gareth. And it is something that we're very mindful of when we're doing our best to manage. But I think it's not the ideal position to be in the medium to long term. So again, it's something that we probably need to address as we transition into the corporate joint committee structures in the near future.
Councillor Morgan, you want to come in again?
I was just to reset. This is something that will need to be addressed as we transition to CJCs, definitely.
Indeed. Any more questions or observations? Okay, I'll move to the recommendations. Are we agreed?
Happy to move the report.
Second.
Thank you. Are we agreed? So Liz, Councillor Bennett,
Agree.
Councillor Thomas,
Agree.
Councillor David,
Agree, please.
Councillor Gowden,
Agree.
and Councillor Morgan, and Councillor Andrew Morgan.
Agree.
I think Councillor Sean Morgan, you've seconded it and so.
Yeah, agree.
And then Councillor Garrett, you also. So I think we
Agreed,
can move on to the next item, which is engagement with regional higher and further education. I guess that's Colin.
Yes, I'll take that. Councillor, thank you. So the paper introduces proposed memorandum of understanding with regional HE and FE higher education and further education. What are the drivers for this? Well, as identified in the regional economic industrial plan, we have key objective to be competitive, and that's through innovation-led growth. It's very much central to the plan, and we know the degree to which we need strong HE and FE representation within that. Likewise, the REIP sets out a clear ambition to convene industry-led series of skills and employability interventions that improve opportunities for people across the region. And again, this implicitly requires alignment with HE and FE. And just finally, and I think this is really important, that there are currently some really strong examples of business engagement with academia in the region, but it's probably less strategic than we would like. So we want to improve that both in terms of, for example, primes and the penetration where we see, which is a lot less successful, which is with the SME community. In terms of progress made to date, we've been involved with USW led a HEFCU bid to form a South Wales civic engagement partnership to emphasise that this does, as we note in the paper, incorporate HE and FE from across the region, but it is much more focused on civic engagement. And this is really seeking to build on existing relationships in terms of civic engagement, including enhancing links between higher and further education, knowledge transfer and student support and other areas like that. The driver for these institution-specific MOUs, Memorandum of Understanding, is that over and above this excellent work of the South Wales Civic Engagement Partnership, we've initiated discussions with Cardiff University, Cardiff Met and USW, and through USW, the wider FE network. This will allow us to resource and develop specific bids and projects and really build out complementarity across the ecosystem in the region. The institutions have been exceptionally welcoming of this approach. They see the benefit of it. They understand that we want to develop subject matter expertise, for example, and that will help us to work together in that regard. So at an early stage, these MOUs will focus on forming a framework for future collaboration. We're looking at partnership to initiate and oversee the collaborations, subject-specific areas, the establishment of resources, identifying early on opportunities for commercialisation and business engagement, and collaboration in teaching, learning, research, and knowledge transfer. One of the key aspects this will help us with as well is that advocacy with UKRI, UK and Welsh governments. There are some stark numbers in the report that point to some of the ongoing struggles we have in terms of leveraging in research and innovation funding as against our other developed nations, Scotland, Northern Ireland. So we want to improve in those areas. So moving onward, we'll also ensure that cluster organisations such as FinTech Wales and CS Connected are part of this party, so to speak, and will help us to enhance the outcomes that we can gain. So the MOUs are appended in appendices 2 to 4 for each of the institutions. We are already in motion with the early stages of these, which is good news. So from here on in, the next steps are really to coordinate signing of the MOUs based on our recommendations that we note and approve the approach to formal engagement with HE and FE in the region, and also if Cabinet could approve substantially each of the MOUs. There's some fine tuning to do in terms of legals, but they are, if you could approve them substantially, subject to minor amendments, we can then move forward.
Thanks very much, Colin. I personally think this is the right way to go. We need a far more strategic engagement and systematic engagement with the FE and HE sector. And I like the fact that we are starting to see it as around civic engagement, recognising the different roles that we can all play. Do we have any observations or questions? It is fairly straightforward. Do we have someone to, Councillor David.
Yeah, welcome this report. Thank you, Chair. Very happy to move the recommendations. We know that higher education is an important motor to a successful economy for all sorts of reasons, not least the role in research and development and business startup, but also as employers in their own right, and the impact that they can have. I just wanted to ask, and I really welcome the fact that this is about those institutions, us helping to improve collaboration between those institutions. But I'm mindful that Wales is a small country, and we'll have other higher education institutes in Wales, and I wouldn't want to, whilst our focus is on those that are based in the region, I wouldn't want to lose sight of the opportunities that will exist on a all Wales basis, because of the obvious linkages there, and the benefits, and the way that quite often Welsh Government will obviously look at it through the lens of an all Wales basis, but given our size, naturally we can, you know, our institutions cannot quite often, or more often than not, play a lead role in some of those initiatives in any respect. So I don't think it that those potential links anyway need to undermine the work that will take place within the region.
Thank you, Councillor David. To note on that, absolutely agree. So, for example, in the component semiconductor area, the work that we do with both Cardiff University and Swansea University is utterly critical. So maintaining those partnerships is very, very important. So yeah, that's noted. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for
Thanks
that.
very much, Councillor David. I see you move to recommend the report. Do we have a seconder?
Happy to second, Chair.
So if we could just quickly agree, Councillor Gowden,
Sorry, agree.
Councillor Thomas, Gerard,
Agreed.
Councillor Thomas Stephen,
Agreed.
Councillor Burnett,
Agree.
myself agreed. Councillor Andrew Morgan,
Yes, agreed.
Councillor Sean Morgan.
Yeah, agreed.
Fine, thank you very much. Let's move on to the next item, which is the UK Semiconductor Strategy Report.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take this one. So in regards to this is simply an overview and I highlight some priority actions that we're taking in relation to the UK Government National Semiconductor Strategy. This was published in May 2023. Very obviously, you know, at CCR, we've targeted compound semi as a priority industrial cluster. We've put efforts and resources across innovation, infrastructure and skills in the development of the cluster. So this is a critical document for us. Semiconductors more generally have been identified as one of the 5 technologies of tomorrow by DSIT, Department of Science, Innovation and Technology. And it's a key underpinning technology as recognised by UK government. There have been, as has been noted in previous regional cabinet meetings, delays to the publication of the strategy. In the interim, what we've seen is the US Chips and Science Act. It's around an envelope of around about $280 billion. And the European Chips Act, which is around about £43 billion equivalent, they've been launched and they're providing policy and fiscal incentives for research and manufacturing of semiconductors, really aimed at onshoring or reshoring semiconductor production to Europe and the US. So for that reason, and why is it the UK government's been clear, it can't and won't enter a subsidy race, so to speak. So the main thrust of this strategy is a focus on R&D, early design, prototyping, and next generation compound semiconductors. So it falls very, very squarely in our bailiwick, which is great news, really. Quickly, the overview of the strategy, there are 3 key areas of focus. The first is to grow the domestic sector, and that includes investments of up to £1 billion over the next decade, and we'll talk to that in a moment. The second area of focus to mitigate the risk of supply chain disruption, and we've seen how that can be critical both within our own region and across the UK. And the third is to protect national security. So it highlights that semiconductors are both critical to UK national security and can also give rise to risks, which we have to manage appropriately. In terms of the funding, resources and priority actions in the UK National Semiconductor Strategy, the initial funding of 200 million is available from 2023 to 25, and that will be on the UK's existing strategic advantage in semiconductor design IP and the development of compound semiconductors and the R&D ecosystem. There are some details on financial support for the semiconductor manufacturing sector, so that would impact the companies who are live in the region in that area, and that's expected in autumn 2023. And also the announcement of a new UK Semiconductor Advisory Panel, UK SAP, as it's called, and that will oversee this strategy. We already know that representatives from South East Wales compound semiconductor cluster will have a place on this. So we provided some analysis. Very briefly, you know, we know that this funding envelope pales in comparison to the US and Europe, but there is a very distinct approach to this strategy, which says that we're going to move away from that. That also doesn't preclude us from targeting aspects of, say, for example, the US CHIPS Act, where they've established an International Technology Security and Innovation Fund, ITSI, that has around about 500 million allocated to it for international collaborations. And we've been having discussions with the Department of Trade, the US Department of Trade, as to how we can leverage that. The funding is aimed at niche areas and gaining a competitive advantage. So again, it's very welcome that compound semiconductors squarely in the sights of this strategy. And also there's skills and talent support in the strategy. There's one aspect here where it references skills and talent support, which would, for example, around about technology institutes, which don't exist in the Welsh policy context. So we do have some work to do in that regard. As a final point, the tools, facilities and infrastructure aspect, we need to really take the lead on this and develop a bit of a case around what we can do with domestic supply chains and the role for firms such as KLA that are anchored in the region. So we do have some work to do in that regard. The proposed response from CCR is, you know, firstly, we're in the process of issuing a letter to the Right Honourable Chloe Smith MP, Secretary of State for DCIT, outlining the CCR position and putting the region to the forefront of the conversation. We're working with CS Connected to establish clear areas of focus and influence UK government decision makers. We will liaise with industrial partners in the region to understand their priorities and need for support. And finally, as mentioned before, developing those international relations, particularly where there's potential funding, for example, the US ITSI fund, which we can get access to. So with that in mind, just moving to the recommendations, which are simply to note the analysis and priority actions related to the national semiconductor strategy. Thank you.
Thanks, Colin. Do we have any observations? I think it's with a sigh of relief that the UK government finally issued a strategy and that we can start moving on it and reposition ourselves in that context is good. Since we're being asked to note the contents of this report, could I just have a show of hands if we agree? Councillor, yeah, great. Thanks very much. Am I right in thinking we have to come out of this meeting and go into another?
You are, sorry, yes. If we can reconvene in a few minutes on the other link, that would be wonderful. Thank you very much.